stop the record afterwards before we go into yen. But let's start with our legs this week, the calf, and so we'll get a little bit of bonus hamstring in there as well. But remember, there are a couple of ways to do your calf. One way being here, setting back, massaging side to side, just kind of moving around. Welcome, Heather. It's not showing you on mute, Heather. I can't hear anything, but if you want to check that from your end, I'm not sure why it's not showing it. Maybe you are and it's just not showing it. If this doesn't work in this child's pose position, because it can be hard on some knees, you can always come here, massaging and rolling up and down the calf. And then the calf is a great place in our body. Most of us can reach our calf pretty well. So we could always simply use our hands, or I sometimes like to use, like if you happen to have a stick roller or a rolling pin, that can feel really nice on your calf also. So the calves are a pretty easy place in our body to get to multiple ways. So if one thing doesn't work, just try something else. But this is my favorite way to do it in the all four position. But if that does not feel good on the knees, by all means, lengthen that leg out in front of you, or even use your hands to massage the calf. So you can be down low, or you can sit a little higher. I'm just kind of rocking in and around and across. Getting a little bit of bonus hamstring in there. The best way to do hamstrings is sitting in a chair or on a bench. But you get a little bit of hamstring here. And then just move that ball just maybe an inch. And massaging down a little bit lower. Oh my goodness, Amy. Luke is like a teenager already. Hey, Luke, how'd you get so big, buddy? You're like all grown up. It's so funny to see, or so fun just to see kids. I don't feel any older. How is it that they're getting older? Welcome, Dar and Alyssa and Stacy. So again, those of you coming in, if this position of kind of calf massage doesn't work, you can always extend the leg long, kind of lifting and rolling here, or the calves are a really nice area just to use your hands, or a rolling pin, stick type roller works really nice on the calves as well. It's not that these balls are the only way to massage. I just think they're versatile because you can have a bunch of different equipment, but you can get almost every part of your body with just these two balls in a bag, or if you buy the little set. Nice. And then maybe moving that ball down just a little bit more, getting kind of the base of the calf. This is usually where I set a little higher and apply a little smash from the top. So I put a little weight from the top. I get into the hamstring a little more that way. It's right where the calf is, the gastrocnemius and the soleus is coming down into that Achilles tendon. So it can often be really tender right there. So just kind of be aware of how much pressure you apply. So maybe revisiting any part of that calf that feels like it might need a little bit more attention. So for me, it's right here where we are. But if you felt like you need a little more attention in the center of the calf or the high calf, feel free to take this last minute working any area that feels best. I usually spend about 5 minutes per calf when I can, but even a minute or two. I wouldn't spend more than 10 minutes on a calf. We begin to cross that line of beneficial into, just agitating too much. This position is also really nice for opening the front of the ankle, the shin. Nice. And then as you come off, especially if you were in kind of that knee tuck position, maybe take just a moment, stretch the legs long. Give that a second to just ease off the knees. And then when you're ready, we'll do the other side. So we'll switch over. You have the same options again, rolling the calf out long, using your hands, using a rolling pin, a massage stick. Or we're starting right up at the top of the calf. You can be all the way down here. You can be up a little higher. Just moving and massaging around. Nice. And no one can hear you, so if you need to go a little bit, feel free. This one is a little bit sticky. Nice. And then maybe moving that ball down just a little bit. If you're in this child's pose position. This is not usually my tight side, but it is feeling really tight, probably because I've been giving the other side of my body more attention. So now this side has become tighter. So just always noticing and listening to your body. So yeah, just kind of rocking side to side, even sometimes like this is really tight for me. So just kind of holding here for a few breaths. And really focusing on my inhale and exhale, because when something's a little bit intense, we have that tendency to want to hold our breath. And we definitely want to keep that oxygen flowing. So I know I've said it before, but rolling definitely helps it release. It helps release lactic acid that gets trapped in the muscle. It also helps blood supply flow in, right? If everything's tight and knotted up, blood vessels aren't going to travel through as well. So it helps release the junk we need to get out and helps bring in fresh blood supply, therefore oxygen as well. Nice. And then give that ball one more roll, coming down to the base of that calf, top of the Achilles tendon. This is where I usually set up a little bit higher. I also feel that one into my hamstring a little more. Right about where the ball is, there's usually a trigger point on most people of their hamstring here. So in this place, you can get a little bit of hamstring relief. Welcome, Valerie. So when you roll in this child's pose position, you do get a little bit of hamstring work. The best way to get into the hamstrings is to actually sit on a chair, or I will show you kind of on a little bench here in a moment. It just makes it a little bit easier to get up into the hamstring. You can roll the hamstring here. And if you're pretty tight in your hamstrings, this may be like super awesome and all you need. For whatever reason, my hamstrings are rarely a place that I roll. They're rarely a place that are tight. In fact, they're basically hypermobile. So I don't put a lot of effort into my hamstrings, but if you've got some tight hamstrings, you can also cross the other leg over, or you could even just kind of set and smash in, or showing you with a chair or a bench. I have a little bench in here. If we come more into a seated position, here, this bench is kind of cushy, so it's not the best one to use. But in this more of a seated position, now I can kind of lean forward, lifting my glutes, really getting a little bit more pressure into the hamstring. So we'll spend a little bit of time here on our hamstrings. But if you're like, don't need my hamstrings at all, they feel fine, feel free to roll any other part of your body. And if you're on the floor and it's just pretty tough, even if you need to go off of camera, find something that you can sit on, coffee table, chair, and you'll get a little bit better massage there on the hamstring. If it's just not working for you, you can always just roll your glute instead. So you can come up into your glute and start rolling it. There's a little spot on my hamstring I can feel. Some people are always really tight in their hamstring. I'm really tight in my quads. My hamstrings are a little over flexible. That's just me personally. I know that about myself, so I rarely roll my hamstrings on my own. But they can be fabulous to roll. Yeah, it kind of makes a difference when you sit in that chair. And if you need to sit sideways on the chair, so you can kind of, let your bottom even hang off a tiny bit to get a little bit closer to the knee. Nice. Just kind of moving that around up and down your hamstring, maybe a few more seconds on one side, and then we'll switch to the other side in a moment. But right about, I'm trying to stand up, usually about right here, kind of just above center of the hamstring is a known kind of trigger point. Very common to tighten up. So a lot of times if you get the ball right in to that area, I can even kind of in this position bent over, really feel that muscle and roll over it and around it. You'll really release some of that hamstring. Nice. And then we'll just switch on over to the other leg. Now feel free to stay a little longer in your hamstrings. We're going to work our way up towards our glutes in a minute, which a couple of you have already come to your glutes, which is perfectly fine. And when we work up to our glutes in a bit, if you're like, I have really tight hamstrings, stick on your hamstrings a little bit longer. Remember, you don't have to transition exactly as I do. You really don't even have to do anything that I'm doing. So if you're like, man, my chest is what's really tight today, roll your chest. I do try to kind of vary from week to week a little bit of what we're working on, but I view this as a class to come learn. And if you're like, I don't know, everything hurts, then just roll where we're rolling. But also use it as your time that you just set aside yourself, that one day a week that I'm going to roll, and roll anything you like, because many of you come very regularly and you know what you're doing, and you can just roll any part of your body that you would like to roll. You can also use a stick roller a little bit on the hamstrings, coming up here. So you could use like a rolling pin or a stick roller. To me, the hamstrings are probably the hardest part of my body to roll, just because of location. And that's just me. If you're pretty tight, it probably doesn't matter, because if you even just kind of touch the area, you're going to feel that tightness and soreness. And then so if you are tight in your hamstrings, again, feel free to kind of stay there. If you're like, man, my calves need a little bit more attention, give your calves a little bit more attention. Or we'll just slowly work up the body. Now you could stay sitting in a chair to roll your glutes. If you're like, I kind of like this sitting in a chair thing, then stay sitting in the chair. You can use both of the balls at the same time in the bag, or I like to come into just one ball. So you could do it here, sitting in the chair. I like to come on the ground. That's just my preference. But by all means, feel free to stay in that chair. And the glutes can also be really nice to roll up against the wall. And I'll show you that one in a second. But here's kind of the floor position. Nice. Just working around the glutes or against the wall. Just taking that ball right behind the glute and leaning in here. Now these small balls work great if you've been rolling a while and you're like, I want to invest in another piece of massage equipment. The same person that makes the roll model, that makes the two blue balls in the bag, she makes this a little bit bigger gray ball. It's about the size of a softball. I love to use that one on my glute because it's just big enough that it makes it a little bit easier to roll on. So as I said, these two balls are super versatile, and you could do tennis balls, lacrosse balls. We just talk about these a lot at VFit. Rochelle has them linked on the class. I just think they're like made just right. And so Jill Miller, the same person that creates those, she also has this little bit bigger one, and they're all sold on Amazon, and they're all like about the same price. So I like to use that little bit bigger ball. You can also use a foam roller on your glutes. But I like really love to roll on this gray ball. I love it, Heather. You got your girls there with you, but they're not rolling. I had a mom today in my local class. She was like, "You've got to come do this with the athletes." I'm like, "I know, I'm trying." But coaches don't like to sacrifice their practice time, even though I keep telling them if you have your athletes do this a little bit, they perform better and they get injured less. So we'll see if we can finally get coaches to take us up on it. All right, so rolling anywhere down the back of the body, calf, hamstring, glute. As you're doing your glutes, do get a little bit on that outer side of the glute. All right, on that outside, the gluteus medius and maximus come up in here, and the IT band comes up and attaches in there. So don't forget the side of the glute. So my goal for today's class is kind of the whole back of the body. We are just working our way up that back side. But remember, if you're like, man, I really want to roll my quads today, flip over and roll your quads. If you're like, I don't know how to do that, I will talk to you about that a little bit while you're rolling glutes. So if anybody is just, man, I really need to work my quads, I like to do quads, 2 balls in the bag, and then you're just going to lay on them. So we're going to work the back of the body today, but if you need to come into your quads, feel free, come over, roll here. Or you can work the balls rolling pin style, pressing and massaging there. Otherwise, stick with those glutes. And when you're ready, start to transition to that other glute. So coming onto the other side. Nice. Getting the gluteus maximus, that's the big back part of our glute. And then around the side into the gluteus medius and minimus. Glutes are nice. You could even lay on your back here. This is how I roll my glutes most of the time. I'll just lay here. Takes the load off. I can roll to my side and roll back onto my back. And really work all the way through and around. Just hanging out and just sinking into areas that feel a little bit more tight. Get right into your hip rotators. Kind of between the back of the main part of your gluteus maximus, so between kind of here and the true side, kind of right in between there. You can usually get a little bit of space in. It's right up into the hip rotators. It can be a little more intense right there, but a whole lot of good. Sometimes you can actually feel little knots as you're rolling around, and what you want to try to do is just stick right around that little knot when it happens. A little side to side and back and forth, small movements. Getting right into it. Another minute or so here, and then we'll work our way all the way up the back side of the body. Feel free to go back to the other glute too. If you're like, oh, the other side was tighter, Take this last minute going back to the other side. And breathe. Try not to get caught up holding your breath, especially as it gets a little intense. Nice. Then we'll start to work our way up our back. So we'll just take our time coming up the back of the body. So as we get into this lower part of the back, we have a little bit of natural curvature. So sometimes when you bring the balls right there, the space between on the spine, and you simply lay into them, because of the natural curvature in your back, you might not feel like you get too deep of a massage. So if you want a little bit more deep intensity, couple of ways to do that. One is to hug the knees into the chest and then just kind of rock around, and your hands could be on the ground if you like, to help balance you. Another way would just be to find, if you have a yoga block, works great, but in this position, it's not as big of an arch as your neck. So even just a book. So this book is maybe 2 inches thick, whereas a yoga block maybe 4. And I can just place the balls on the book, lay over it, and that little bit of height presses those balls right into the arch of my back. Now I have kind of a little bit more of an excessive arch. Some people's back's a little bit flatter, so you might find you don't even need to raise the balls up a bit. But any type of little book, you know, maybe 2 inches, maybe 1 inch, just depending on your body, or simply hugging the knees into your chest with or without the book, can dig right into that low back. And then you always have the option to do one side at a time. So taking one of the balls out of the bag and focusing just on one side of the body is also going to give a little deeper massage. But I am just kind of wiggling side to side. And then I press into one side, maybe for a few breaths, just leaning my body weight to that side. And then the other. So what you're getting here is your quadratus lumborum, the back muscle, but you're also getting in from the back side of the psoas and the iliacus, those hip flexor muscles that are the 2 muscles in our body that cross the hip, attach into the spine, and then come down and flex the knee up, flex the hip. So it's often an area that a lot of us suffer some pain, some tension. So even just taking a few minutes each night before bed, just to massage this low part of your back, really bring relief to low back tightness. I did a lot of this when I strained my low back a few months ago. And I do attribute my recovery, you know, even though it still took me a while, it took me a little over 2 weeks to really get back to normal. But I think taking this time each day, cut that time, because I hear people say they are just out for long, long times with low back pain. So I think it can definitely help. Now, always get things checked if you don't start to get a little bit more relief, because you can get slip disc, bulging disc, nerve issues for your low back as well that you want to be careful of. And then you can stick right here with the low back if you're like, I'm loving this and I need more time, or we can just kind of roll the balls up a little more into the center of the back. You can keep that book if you like, But here, our back kind of naturally curves away. So you might find you don't really need any extra height. I can lift my glutes. And sometimes in this position, it takes a little bit of ab work and strength. I like to take my hands behind my head, lift my glutes lightly, and just kind of shift back and forth an inch or two on these balls. And then I'll let the glutes rest. And I'll come kind of into this little mini sit-up. But just this lifting and lowering lets those balls press right into kind of the center of the spine. I can keep my elbows down for a little more support if I need to, rather than holding the hands behind the head. I don't usually stay in the center part of my back that long, just knowing me, but you could stay here as long as you need to. And then when you're ready, you start to kind of roll up between the shoulder blades. And I do like to here really bring the hands behind my head, lift my glutes, and just roll those balls up and down right between the shoulder blades. If this is too intense or more work than you want to do tonight, you can keep the hips down. And again, just kind of move and rock and circle all around into the balls. And then just lift the hips when you feel okay, maybe for just 5 or 10 seconds. Then you can always take the hips back down. So we officially have about 3 minutes left before yin starts, so feel free to work up and down that entire back as you like, or go back to glutes or hands or calves or any other area of the body that we didn't address tonight. In 30 minutes, it's just hard to get the entire body. We can usually get either a third to a half, depending on what we focus on. And so today we did get mostly the entire back side of the body. Welcome. If you're starting to come in for yin, we will shift into yin in about 2 minutes. Right up between the shoulder blades is an area of my body I try to several days a week at least get a few minutes on the balls. I don't usually get to it every day, but nice, super tight areas. So just getting to know your body and those areas that are a little tighter, a little more tender. Try to roll them a few times a week, 2, 3. You could even do it every single day if you have the time, but just a few minutes at a time, not more than 10 minutes in one area. Meaning our back, we could spend, 30 minutes on our back because we've got a bunch of different areas. But even 10 minutes on the entire back would be awesome if we did that a few times a week. So continue to roll there. You've got another minute. I'm just going to kind of start transitioning towards yin a little bit, but use your time to finish rolling the back. Get my things out of the way. Nice. And then I'm going to turn that recording off so that we can get that posted.